Okay, so I've placed the little spacer blocks that they provide in the holes, but prior to that, you won't see now, but there's a little ring of silicone around the thread hole just to seal it between the bottom of the block and the hole, so no water can go down the hole into the roof cavity. So those blocks are now in place. And then the brackets, I've actually added another little ring of silicone to the top of them. Underneath they've got foam anyway, so the foam will squash down on top of that, but I'm putting a little bit of silicone to seal up the top of the screw head as it goes in. I don't know if we're going to be able to see this, but I'm then going to put some Loctite on the threads so that we can stop them coming loose. So I very carefully drop that through the middle of my silicone ring on the top there, drop it into the hole, fits in beautifully, and then sorry, you probably can't see, and then we do the other one, 2 of those in, drop that one in and the hole, and in, wriggle it in, and that fits in nicely. And then we just tighten them up gently. One thing I really like here is the fact that the underside piece of foam comes slightly up. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. It comes slightly up the side here. So as I tighten down, that foam protects the side of the roof. Very nice thought. Rather than cut the foam off at the bottom, they clearly gave that some thought about how to protect the roof. So we'll just tighten these down. Because it's got foam underneath, you need to keep retightening each one as it goes down. Careful not to over tighten really. I don't see, with foam underneath, you don't really want to have to force it down firm and tight, but not so hard that almost putting too much pressure on yourself. And then go back to the other one, because as you tighten down one, the other one needs to come down just a little bit. There we go. That one's in now. That's the tab, but as I said, I don't know if you could see when I was doing it, but this little bit of foam here protects the roof really nicely. I've got a little bit of silicone around here just to protect the top of the screw. And these are 316 stainless steel. I mean, these are really good quality screws. And then you've obviously got the protector here on the bracket for when the side piece comes on. So we've got most of them on now. Move on to the last one, and then we're ready for the roof rack fitting. So busy putting the rails on. They have roof racks upside down, putting the rails on. This is what they suggest. The rails go on either side. I tell you to take measurements to get it in roughly the right place. I guess you're never going to get it 100% accurate till you get it on, and then you need to tighten up. So I might just put it on and then keep it loose, and then slide it in position when it's on. The other thing you need to do is fix the wind deflector on the front. It's interesting. There's actually no details on what to do. It's not rocket science. So it comes with the bolts already in. Now the ones over there on the main run seem to slide them in. They won't turn. The locking pieces at the bottom. These pieces here. I'll show you now. Here on the bottom of the screw. There. They seem to slide into these channels quite nicely. And you can't turn them, so you have to take it off the nut, get it right, and then screw it down, so you can't turn it, which is good. I'll show you in a minute anyway. But here, this channel seems to be slightly larger, in that you can actually turn them like that. So they do actually turn in this channel. Sorry, I didn't show that very well. So they do actually turn in this channel here. So, but what they do is they provide a little hole next to the screw, and I think you put a little screwdriver in there to hold the nut in the right position as you tighten them up. No, there isn't one at the ends because you can get at the end, and the same with the other end, so we'll have a go at that now. So yeah, I've got the wind deflector on the front as I thought. Use the little hole in there to put your screwdriver in to keep the block underneath in the right place. The end ones you have to slide your finger up inside. There's a hole under here. You can get your finger in there just kind of to hold it in roughly the right place. Pull them down tight. I'll put some Loctite on those threads again just to be sure. Now this is where on the channels here, putting the side rails now onto the bottom of the roof rack. Roof rack's upside down. It's got an arrow here to tell you that's the front, which is lovely. Although you know I've triple checked measurements with the roof as well just to see how it sits between this hole here and the front, because I want to know that distance. That all looks good. So these nuts that they provide are very clever, because what they've done is they've taken a corner off here, the edge off here, so that when you put it in this channel here, okay, so you've got to turn it that way it just turns. You can't turn it the other way because it's too big there. So it's very clever how they've done that, but you have to get that nut in first. So that hole lines up there, so I'll put that nut in there. There's one that's going to line up in here. Get that one in there. There's 4 of these each side, so that one can go there, and the last one goes on the very end runner. Again, do it the right way around, turn it so it's in the right place. Okay, so bit fiddly. Next bit, so the stainless bolts come, there's a spring washer and a flat washer. Obviously the spring washer goes at the top. I'll put some Loctite on these threads as well, and then I'm going to put them through here and tighten them. I'm not going to tighten these fully because I'm going to try first time round putting it on the roof with them almost in the right place, and then see if I can get underneath, get my hand underneath to tighten them up. If I can't, then I'll get them in the right place and take it off, and then have to think about tightening them. So it's a bit of trial and error, but let's see how we go. So next job is to fix the rails to these nuts all the way along on both sides, ready for lifting onto the roof. So the roof rack's on. I'll give you a quick update of how we got here. The initial suggestion of turning it upside down, measuring, fitting the rails, and then putting it on the vehicle, I thought that was going to be really difficult, because no way you can 100% accurately measure it, and tightening is going to be very difficult. And actually, so then we decided to try and put it on loose and lift it over, but I actually discovered that lifting it over was almost impossible. Even one of you either side, just the ability to literally, you know, be standing and leaning. You got to lean forward to hold a very heavy weight without dropping it on the roof. So that really didn't work. So what I decided to do in the end was, I am lucky enough to have open joists in my garage in the roof, so I chucked some ropes over and suspended the roof rack over the top of the car and drove underneath it. And that was probably the best thing I could have done, because all the faffing about can be done without any weight in your arms. However, I also discovered that it was actually better to fit the rails to the car first. Incredibly fiddly, but I think the best way to go. Now I really say that because under here, I'm going to try and get the camera in here. Okay, so down the side behind the fixing down there is a bolt that you have to fix, and even with it, I don't know if you can see it, I'll come out. So basically this nut, sorry, a bolt on the other side, because it's pointing downwards, is really angled down. You've got to get a spanner behind there, which is pretty difficult. It's possible, but it's really difficult with the roof on. So I fixed the rails without the roof on. It's still hard, it was still very hard to get a spanner behind there, but fix these side rails on first. The end ones are a bit easier than the middle one. Anyway, so we then, once the two side rails were on, we lowered the roof rack onto the top of them. But I was very careful to ensure that, you see those nuts up there, right up there. So the nuts were in the roof rails, sorry, the nut and bolt were already in the roof rails. And these turn, remember I showed you they turned? Well, I turned them so that they were this way. And the secret is actually to make sure the bolt is only just started in it, because otherwise you can't lift it deep enough into the rut to turn it. So sit them down in each of the positions facing long ways, and then lower the rack onto it so that they sit there. You can then, it's easy, the end two are easy, you can just push the bolt up, get a spanner underneath it and turn it, and then you can lock it down. So the end two are actually quite easy to do. So this one, but the two middle ones, the middle one, no, two middle ones, sorry, there are four of them. So there's one there, another one there, and one at the end. So the end ones are all right, but this one was fairly tricky because you just can't get your hand underneath here. And this one's even harder. This one's very, very hard. So I was able, I've got small hands, I was able to get my fingers underneath, but it was really, really difficult, really hard. I actually in the end used my son, who's 7 years old, put him on the roof and got his hands underneath to help me. A very slow process to tighten them up, because you can only do short turns on a spanner, and you need a 17mm spanner for these nuts. These bolts under here, you need 17mm. I actually didn't have the right spanner, so I made sure I went out and got one quick, and then tighten it down. The beauty of doing it this way is you can get it 100% positioned. You can slide it, move it into any position you want, because it's sitting on the roof, and you just slide it. And then when you turn these nuts, when these bolts, these nuts turn and lock. Very clever design, very impressed by that. Anyway, so that's the roof rack. It looks bloody good, I have to say. I love the wind deflector on the front. That is awesome by the looks of it. It really does follow the contours of the roof nicely. And the joy with what I did about lifting it down, and I was right, you needed to put the roof deflector on first, the wind deflector, is that because I'd lowered it down by ropes, I didn't have any damage to the roof. I can't help feeling if you tried to lift it all over, you would have scratched the roof several times over. But the way, as I said, lowering it from the roof of the garage, easy option. If you don't have that ability, then I suggest you really come up with a plan, because it's incredibly difficult otherwise. But that said, beautiful roof rack, very happy.